Hey everyone, this is David here from SheetsFinance and welcome back to our Getting Started series. In this part, we're going to look at building a technical analysis using SheetsFinance in Google Sheets. At the time of this recording, SheetsFinance has 9 technical analysis lines that you can generate over a history of up to 20 or 30 years, depending on the stock that you're analyzing. This function is perhaps slightly more complex than some of our other functions, but as always, we have our handy function generator that is available from the drop-down menu for you to build the technical analysis with. I'll start without it because I'll be explaining each part of the function, but you can always skip forward to the second part of this video where we will rebuild this analysis using the function generator, which will be a lot quicker and a lot simpler. Cool, so let's get started. In cell A1, I'm going to type in SF_technical. That's the function that we're after. And as always, I can click this little question mark and I'll get the formula tip or hint. And by opening up the drop down, sometimes it will look like this. I can read and learn about all the different function parameters and have some examples shown to me right here within Google Sheets. Of course, you can always go to our documentation on technical analysis that is available on our website, and there is a bunch of examples and screenshots and so on. Cool, so back to it. The first argument is always the stock or financial asset that we're analyzing. So we're going to put in Apple. Secondly, it's the type. This is the analysis type or the technical analysis type that we want to execute. So I'm going to do the simplest, a simple moving average. So that is an SMA, and that needs to be followed by the period. So I want to do a 20-day SMA. I need to type in SMA 20. That's all connected, all one word. And then the next section is I can AND this with any additional daily parameters that I want to display side by side with my analysis line. So often we'd want to see some sort of pricing line and then layer the analysis on top of it. So we would AND it with the close or the open, or you can also AND this with all. I can just display the simple moving average line as well as all the other available daily data points. So if that doesn't make sense, you'll find out in a second. When I click enter, you'll see what all means. The third argument is called period. Here we define the, we'll call it the sub period. So if we're trying to do a 20-day simple moving average, then I would type in daily. But if we wanted to do an intraday analysis and we wanted to do a 20-minute intraday analysis, or every 1 minute, then I would type in 1 minute. I can also type in other sub periods like 5 minutes or a half an hour. And that would just apply it in bins or lots of that particular sub period. So for instance, if it's an SMA 20 and you're doing it over 5-minute bins, that's 20 lots of 5-minute. But let's keep it simple and we're just going to do the daily line. And then it's just your standard start and end date. So I'll do today and I'll do the last 2 months, and the end date will be today as well. There are some options that we can apply to our analysis, but for now, I'm just going to close that bracket and click enter. Great, so there is 2 months of pricing data, and on the right-hand side, you'll see our simple moving average line. This is, of course, just the numbers. We're going to chart this in a moment, but this is all the data that's needed to plot the simple moving average. As I mentioned before, in that second parameter, the type parameter, I used AND all. What that resulted in was these 6 additional columns being printed out on next to the simple moving average. If I want less of these, or I want to select specific ones, I can jump back in there. And for instance, I could just say AND date and, for instance, close, and I could rerun that. And now I'm only being returned the date, the close of that day, and then the simple moving average line. You can as well omit all additional things and only include SMA 20, and that would just give you this column alone. So there's a lot of, it's very customizable the way this function is built. Cool. And one last thing before we chart is we can see that right now the data is being displayed in descending order with the latest piece of information first and the last chronologically. So to chart it, we need to reverse it. So as the last argument, I'm going to include the option negative, minus, reverse, however you want to call it, by including that as that last argument, it's going to output the data in reverse order. Great. So we've got the data that we're after, and now it's just the simple process of charting it. So I can highlight everything that I've got there. I head up to Insert, Chart, and it looks pretty ugly at the moment, but we're going to use, oh, no, I know what I've done wrong. Let's just slightly change our actual range to start at row B instead. Not row B, row 2. Click OK. Great, now I've got my titles, and I might just want to change in the vertical axis my minimum to about maybe 150. And there is our simple moving average, 20-day simple moving average line for Apple over the last 2 months. Of course, I could change that SMA to a different period. For instance, we could do a 5-day SMA, and I'll reload that. And that will be a much tighter line to the actual close price. And of course, we can go much larger, and we could say 100-day simple moving average. And that'll be really quite flat. There are all kinds of analyses. So we also have RSI, exponential moving averages, Williams, ADX, and so on, or standard deviation. So yeah, everything is available to you. So let's just say we went in EMA 10. Cool. So next up, I'll show you an intraday line. It's pretty much the same thing. We're just going to jump back into this function. Let's stick to this EMA 10 line that we're doing, but instead of daily, we're going to do 1 minute. And we're going to just generate it for the last day. So today -1 to today. And I'll click enter. Now our chart will initially not like this because the axes will be off, so we'll just adjust them afterwards. This column on the left-hand side, we will need to change to time because we're working within a day. So I'm going to head to here and I'll just select time like that. So now we can see the time has popped up on this x-axis down the bottom. And we're going to just jump in because the price doesn't change that much in 1 day. We're going to have to change that vertical axis to match it. So let's just say we go to about 180, maybe even more, 188. Great. So now it's applied an exponential moving average to the close price, or not really the close price, but the minute by minute price for Apple. And of course, our title is now incorrect because we're working with exponential moving average. Voila. So as you can see, that just scratches the surface. You can change the stock, you can change the analysis type, you can change both the sub period and the larger macro period. So it's highly customizable, and you can build whatever sort of analysis that you are after. I will now jump into showing you how to do this with the function generator, which you'll see is much quicker than writing the function directly. So yeah, off I go. I'm going to delete everything in cell A1. I'll leave the graph there because we're probably going to be generating a very similar one soon. I'll head to the extensions drop-down menu, SheetsFinance, and then I'll click the function generator. From here on the right-hand side, as you've probably gotten used to, we're going to type in the stock that we're after, and it's always Apple with these examples. Then I'll click technicals from the function type, and as you can see, we now just follow the prompts. There's also a handy little question mark link that will take you straight to our docs where you can read about the particular function you're working on. So let's choose the type. We were working with EMAs, so we'll choose EMA. We'll do daily, and we're doing 10-day period. Metrics, I think we had the date and we had the close, and that was it. And then start date was a few months ago, so let's just do the beginning of September until today. And we'll add the reverse option on the end as was needed, and I'll generate that. Great. So our first issue is that that column is still set to time because the last thing we did was an intraday time, technical analysis. So I'll head to format, I'll go number, and I'll just change that back to a date. That's for starters. And then secondly, our actual axes are wrong because we were looking at intraday data before. So I'll head to the vertical axis, and I'll just get rid of this minimum, or I'll change it back to about 150, which is what we found was right before. And there you go. That's that same graph that we built earlier, except this time we just used the function generator. While we were building the function here on the right-hand side, we could see it in real time in the display. So we understand what it means to change one of these variables as we go. And then once we click generate, it will generate that function in our currently highlighted cell. So for instance, if we wanted a second analysis really quickly, and this one was, for instance, an RSI, I could just click over here, I could change it to RSI, and I could click regenerate, or generate for the second time. So quite quickly, you can build up a ton of lines. You could have one raw sheet and then reference that in a master sheet, or however you'd like. That's the power of SheetsFinance. We deliver the data, and then you can do whatever you want with it. One last tip for people working with technical indicators is that I'm often asked how to just get today's technical indicator. For instance, the RSI 14, just the latest for today. So I'll show you how to do that. And it's very straightforward. The technicals function is built to output a time series, but just with some simple basic Google Sheets functions that you can wrap around it, you can ensure that you always just get the latest value. So for instance, with the SF technical function, again, we'll go for Apple, we'll go SMA 20, and we'll say today, we'll just go today minus 5 to get 5 days of data, and then we'll go till today. And we won't put it in reverse, and we'll just output that. We got an error. Oops, I missed out. Daily. Great. So let's just set these back to numbers. Set it all actually to automatic. Now we just want this last entry, our most recent entry, which will sit at the top. So all we need to do in this case is we can first remove the header with NH, no header, for our options. And now this piece of information out of this returned array is the first column and the first row. So if I wrap this function in a function called index, and this is an inbuilt Google Sheets function, the second and third argument is which row and which column you want to retrieve the data from. So our reference is all three pieces of data. So this SF technical function, and then we want only the piece of data that's in row 1 and column 1. So if I wrap it like that, I'm just going to be returned with the piece of data that was in row 1, column 1 of the output of this function. So hopefully that's not too much of a mouthful, but you can use this index function and a number of other great inbuilt Google Sheets functions for manipulating the output of SheetsFinance functions themselves. So the question I'm always asked is the RSI 14. So for Apple, it would just be RSI 14. Click enter, and there it is. That is the latest daily RSI 14 for Apple. That brings me to the end of this getting started series on the technicals function. It does just scrape the surface, so jump into the docs and leave me a comment if you have any questions, or reach out anytime. Thanks for watching.